So yesterday while I was driving in the car, I was thinking about something. It's this weird double standard that we all just accept in society, and I think most people don't even realize it now. Do you think your boss or the CEO of your corporation or just a random corporation is a completely altruistic person who puts your well-being above their own profits? Most likely, virtually everyone, probably 95% or more people would just laugh in my face and say, hell no, of course not. They would say, oh no, that CEO's in it for the money and the power. They don't care about us little worker bees down here. And I think that they'd probably be correct. I think most people understand that. It's just common sense. We know that when a person gets power over a company, their own self-interest kicks in. And most people know this, and this is why so many people get angry about, down with the CEOs, down with the authoritarian power regime, things like that, right? You'll see it on YouTube, people screaming, running down the street, down with the system, hating on their own bosses, hating on millionaires. It's pretty common. It kind of makes sense just to be like, millionaires are a different type of person than us little people. But here is where the brain switch seems to happen. The exact second that you take that same logic and you don't apply it to a company owner, but instead you start applying it to someone in government or someone in some form of very, very high power, right? Someone who's running a massive global organization rather than a small company. Suddenly, 90% of the world completely flips out. If you were to say, hey, I think the head of this government department or this regulatory agency has a conflict of interest. I think that they are selfish and they only care about themselves or their own family. If you were to say something like, maybe this head of the government agency likes money and power also, just like their CEO. Suddenly, now you're a crazy person, right? Now you're the conspiracy theorist. People start yelling in your face talking about, why aren't you trusting their authority? Why don't you believe reality? What are you, anti-science? Bro, I'm trying to explain to some of y'all. It's the same person. They just put on a different badge. And suddenly we're all just supposed to believe that they lost all of their human greed. They lost all of their selfishness. And they just became a saint that wants to help out the little guy, help out us way down here. They want that money to trickle down to us. It makes zero sense. And when I was thinking about this, I may have figured out why. I think it's because we've been conditioned to believe that the average person, to include ourselves, is too dumb to think. I'm not talking about too dumb to think about something specific, just too dumb to think, period. Ironically, I'm gonna say, think about this. When did just asking a question become a sin? And what I mean is, do you guys remember back with COVID, people would look at some basic physical situation that we were in, they would say something like, wait. So you're saying if I wear this cloth mask, but I can literally put my hand in front of the mask, I can feel my breath going through the mask onto my hand. My hot, humid breath is reaching my hand through the mask. But you're telling me that these virus particles, these little viral particles coming out of my breath that are smaller than almost anything, you're saying that my air can go through the mask, but this virus isn't, that they're getting caught in the mask? This doesn't actually make sense. Or you had people saying, wait, 6 feet social distancing. So you're saying if I sneeze, that the sneeze only travels 6 feet. So it doesn't have anything to do with being upwind or downwind. It doesn't have anything to do with being indoors with the AC blowing, with no AC blowing, stagnant air. It doesn't have anything to do with the size of your lungs. Just 6 feet, no matter what. 6 feet, you're safe. If you're at 5.99 feet, bro, you're about to be fucking cooked. You had people asking these questions, and I think that these are very valid questions. People were just making observations of their environment and just using critical thinking. Because, really notice what they were doing. They weren't claiming to be doctors. No, none of these people were saying, I'm a medical professional. They weren't saying that they have the answers. All they were doing was using their brains to think. They were just looking around the world and just pondering, does A equal B? Does B equal C? Does A equal C? And what response did we get from the news or from people online? We were told, stop thinking, shut up and listen to the experts. You don't have the right degree to be questioning them or asking questions. And here's the funny thing, is some of y'all are listening to this and you're probably thinking, yeah, of course, what right do you have to question them? Because see, we've created a society where if you don't have a credential, you're told that your brain is not allowed to properly function. not in its full capacity. You're supposed to completely outsource your thinking to someone higher up the ladder. And the part that worries me the most about all this is that most people want to do this. Most people are afraid to think, because if you accept that the big institutions may not have your best interest in mind, I think it just terrifies people. So to them, it's way easier to just close their eyes, jiggle keys in front of their face like a little baby, and just pretend that everything's fine. It actually reminds me of the Simpsons movie. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Do you remember there was like a giant angry mob that was marching towards Homer's house? I think they were trying to get Homer, they were trying to kill him, but they were marching towards his house with pitchforks and like torches with fire, right? If I remember right, Homer points down the street and says something like, "Look over there," or he says like, "Oh, he's over there, he's in that house," or points behind a hill or something. He basically uses a distraction, and the entire mob immediately turns around and starts marching towards the other location that he distracted them from, right? Or distracted them to. And that is literally what I feel like is going on in our country. The people at the top just jingle keys in front of our faces just to keep us arguing with one another, and they tell us, hey, don't worry your cute little head about how the system works. We got it covered, buddy. But here's the truth about human intelligence. And there's actually this famous test that proves what I'm about to say, by the way. I looked it up. It's called Wisdom of the Crowds. So years ago, a scientist asked 800 random people at a fair to guess the weight of an ox, right? Like the animal. If you asked one person, what the scientists found was that the person was wildly wrong. I mean, they would be 50, 100, a couple 100 pounds off. If you asked 5 people, they would still be wildly wrong. But when they took all 800 guesses and then took the average, the group was within 1 pound of the exact weight. So let's say the ox weighed 1,000 pounds. They asked one person, the person says, 1,400 pounds, right? So they were 400 pounds off. They ask all 5 people, the guesses are like, one person's at like 600 pounds, and the other one's 1,400, the other one's 2,000, wildly off, right? When they asked all 800 people, they took all 800 guesses, took the average guess. That shit was in 1 pound of the true weight of the ox. So this proves whenever regular people are allowed to think independently and then put their minds together, the average human intuition is actually insanely accurate. It's like when they say 2 heads is better than 1. Yo, that shit is real. That's not just like made up jargon. Now, obviously it takes more than 2 heads though, but I'm saying if you get hundreds or thousands of people to think about something, they can actually come up with probably, if it's not the truth, it will be insanely close to the truth. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. So the only way that you ruin that whole wisdom of the crowd thing is if an authority figure stands on stage with a megaphone, and before anyone guesses, the authority figure says the ox probably approximately weighs 5,000 pounds, and anyone who thinks otherwise is ignorant and a conspiracy theorist. Because the second that people stop using their own heads and just copy the authority, the crowd just loses its mind and loses the ability to critically think. So ultimately, my point is, do not let people convince you that you are too dumb to think. You have a brain in your damn head for a reason. You don't need a specialized degree to spot a logical inconsistency. And you shouldn't have to turn your brain off just because someone's title changed from CEO to director. Questioning things is not crazy. It does not make you a conspiracy theorist. It's the only way that we can keep the authority figures in our lives honest.